Hi, I'm Dr. Dan Ratner. Today I'm joined once again by Stephan for the second of our sessions in the mind-body consultation. He's read Dr. Sarno, and we're going to get into the emotions column today. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we'll get back to you personally. And finally, you can reserve your place in one of my seminars, join my monthly membership group, or purchase any of my mind-body guides, also known as the PDFs, at www.crushingdoubt.org. Now, without further ado, here's my second episode with Stephan. Stephan, I'm really excited to welcome you back here today and to talk to you because you've read now a big chunk of The Divided Mind, and I can't wait to hear how it went for you. But first, welcome back.
Hi, Dan. Thank you for having me. It's great to be back. I did get a chance to read The Divided Mind, and it was quite the read, and a lot of it resonated with me. And as I was reading it, there were so many moments where it very much described what my experience was like with my chronic pain, and even the way I went about being diagnosed with it. And yeah, there was just so much overlap that I could see why this applies to so many people who have some level of chronic pain, and even the way pain is diagnosed. I think it's just a system very much conducive to that. Whereas the way that Dr. Sarno really breaks it down, it's pretty clear. A lot of it is really mental, right? And so I definitely saw that.
Yeah, so listen, one of the things I'm curious about is how much of an eye-opener this was for you, because a lot of people who come to see me have actually read Dr. Sarno, but then they're getting caught on some kind of snag and they need some extended work on this. But a very big amount of the people that I work with also, I introduced to Sarno. And when they first read him, I really like to gauge what was this like for you. For some people, it's like, whoa, that was mind-blowing. It was extremely different than what I know is out there, very paradigm shifting. And for others, it's like, this mirrors something I always knew to be true, but it's not getting voiced out there. And I don't know, and there could be anywhere in between as well. So as you were reading it, what was the experience of reading it like? Was it like you were getting an awakening, or more that just things that always made sense started to make more sense? Or
It was definitely, there's a lot of moments that were like an awakening, like when it discussed how getting an MRI impacted a lot of people. And it made me remember what it was like when I got my MRI, and just even that whole process, even though it was years ago, I feel like the more I went into that process, the more injured I felt, and the weaker I felt, and the more debilitated I felt. And so since I felt that, mentally I became that, and then physically I became that even more. So it became kind of like this cycle. And so seeing this perspective where he describes it so exactly, I thought, wow, maybe that's exactly what happened to me. So it's a mixture of that. It's a mixture of also just continued disbelief that so many people in the medical world just do not really want to acknowledge this,
yeah.
And so it's just because there's also so much data. It's not like Sarno was just throwing out, little stories. No, he had a lot of data and studies, and a lot of really clear explanations behind everything that he was putting out there. And so there's people that know it's just really not such a concern in modern medicine. And yeah, so that's kind of concerning to me,
Yeah. Well, it was of concern to me, certainly in the process of the 8 years of pain I had getting no answers, but it was a concern afterwards. It's part of the reason I do this work, is I'm like, whoa, how did no one tell me about this? How do people not know about this? Were there particular things that jumped out at you in the reading that struck you as significant in your understanding of you and your experience?
Let's see.
It's a lot to take in too.
So yeah, it's a lot to take in. I don't know, particularly points that are made about anxiety and depression. I could see how that definitely could tie into some of my experiences. Um, and ultimately, just understanding how a lot of these different elements are just manifestations of emotional conditions for us that don't get dealt with
Mm-hmm.
properly or in a healthy way. Like that in itself uh, was just very eye opening because I thought, you know what, like I need to get to know myself better too because this is a really good tool and like understanding system. Because if I do really get good at understanding this, I could potentially just skip out on a bunch of issues that I could have developed, you know.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was essentially like a lot of that. I really love how he focuses on like a lot on the unconscious side of things, but also the conscious side of things. Like, because also I think in terms of like the medical world, like there's still like a lot of gaps in terms of like consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
like data and information and studies. And I think he was like very ahead of his time,
Yeah.
and in a lot of his studies.
Well, it's clear, it's great information, and it makes a big difference to many people that it's scientific and logical. And the science, especially coming from a medical doctor, is really important. But you gave a great lead in for where I want to go today. So let's get into that. In my system, I described this to you the first meeting that we have the 3 columns, and they describe different parts of mind body experience. There's the emotions column, which describes exactly what you were just talking about a little while back, about how your feeling states can lead to a physical experience and a physiological manifestation. Then there's the doubt column, which is about how your thinking impacts these symptoms and usually is the thing that cements them, makes them long term. So you definitely are, when we get to the doubt column, which we'll get to next session, we're going to get into a lot of that. And the third column is the power column, where we talk about your relationship with yourself and how to get things kind of more settled so you can get through any plateaus in recovery. But the thing is, you probably haven't really hit any plateaus in recovery because you're just starting out. So it'll be good to do the power column last. Today, we're going to focus on the emotions column. And this is in line with what you said about getting to know yourself and finding out more about how whatever's going on in you is impacting these things. That's exactly what we're going to do today. So I want to describe how this process works. First of all, the emotions column work is the thing that describes the onset of the symptoms, the initial time they start, or upticks in symptoms, or sometimes downturns. So if you find that your symptoms are kind of going up and down at various moments, what we're going to find out is what might be happening for you emotionally at those times, so you can start to see the correlation. And it's that moment-to-moment up and down experience of emotions leading to changes in symptoms as a part of the system that we can start to build on and get you a sense of how does this work and why. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. So here's the way the exercise goes in the emotions column. I tell people this all the time. The task of the emotions column is to come up with, I usually say as a ballpark estimate, 6 to 12 themes that describe you, like your broad emotional world. And it's my job to help bring those out of you. You don't have to know them because it wouldn't make sense for you to, but I can describe to you what kinds of themes we're looking for. And we're going to make a list of them today. So do you have something to write with?
I do.
Okay. So we're going to come up with the kinds of themes that really affect you in your life. And I'm going to organize them in a certain way, and then we're going to start to look at how might they play out in relation to symptoms. Follow me so far?
I am.
Okay. So here is the way we build out themes. Themes are 3 things. They have to be broad, meaning they have to connect to a major part of life. They're not themes that are like what I'm like when I watch TV. That's too zoomed in. It's a broad picture, like how do I feel about my childhood, or how do I feel about mortality, or how's my self-esteem, Or how do I interact with myself around job stuff or, achievement? Something big. You hear the broad picture themes? Okay, so that's one part of it. The next thing is it has to be high stakes. If it doesn't mean much, it's not going to be the kind of thing that affects you. If small things don't drive symptoms, big things do. So if you just moved somewhere and you're feeling really kind of disoriented and like you've lost your home or something like that, that's broad. It's about where you live, and it's high stakes in that this feels big. And then the last part of these themes is it's going to relate to something specific. It's going to connect the present to the past, where something in the present connects to a specific kind of theme of the past. In other words, we're developing broad themes, but they need to be descriptive of you. So we could zoom in on, let's say, mortality. Everybody has feelings about mortality. But you specifically have a story about that and some kind of theme about that. So broad, high stakes, and specific. I'm going to help you develop however many themes we feel we need to. We may not even get to them all today. You might continue this process afterwards. Everybody continues the process afterwards, but we might get to, let's say, 3 or 4 of them today, or we may get to 12 of them. We'll see how fast they develop. So I'm going to ask you some questions to prompt you and move you in this direction. If you had to describe the biggest themes of your life, the things that impacted you the most in the broad form, what would they be? And if you have trouble getting started, I can get you started. But let me know if you have any ideas about that.
You could say probably the career is up there.
Okay, actually, even before you move off of it, let's just go with it. Let's go with the first one you said. Okay, so career, that's certainly broad, but I want to get it in a specific form. Like, what aspect of the career? Is it about your belief system in yourself? Like, is it about your belief in yourself? Is it about feeling limited in some way? Let's get it described in some, even in the broad sense. What about the career tends to affect you?
Just like development and growth in my career. Just making sure that I'm always like progressing and growing.
Okay, so this is a good start to a broad theme. I'm going to put it in words that are mine, and I want you then to alter them into yours. Okay?
Sure.
So I might say to you, okay, what I'm hearing as the theme so far is it's very important to me that I'm always growing and progressing in my career. Does that feel accurate?
Yes.
Okay. So go ahead and jot that down as the beginning point of this theme. And then while you're doing that, I want you to start to think about what's high stakes about it. What hangs in the balance about this issue? Like, what if you weren't feeling like you were progressing or developing? What would that mean then?
Like it has to be meaningful.
Yeah, like in a specific way. Because here's what we're trying to determine: what kinds of things bother you?
Yeah.
In these different areas.
Yes, essentially, with my career, it has to be something that I see like steady progression. It has to be centered around things that are meaningful. And
why is that so important to you, though? Let's dive into that. Makes sense to me, but why?
Because if it's not meaningful, I lose interest, and like if I lose interest, like I don't have passion in it, and if I don't have passion in it, like I don't really want to do it.
Have you had that kind of struggle in your life? Like, have you lost interest in lots of things before?
I have when it's like when I ignore like what it is like I truly need to be doing Like, so since I'm a creator, whenever I put myself in positions where I'm not like actively creating or experiencing or developing that side of myself, I, a lot of times will get there. So for me, a lot of times like I really enjoy like all things like filmmaking. As the last couple of years, I really started to like all things Web3, and I like these spaces because I can continuously grow and learn and develop, right? And that keeps me constantly intrigued for places or situations that make me feel just like stagnant, that they reach like a level and like that's what it'll be.
Yeah.
That tends to kind of just, I don't know, like it
Uh,
turns me off.
okay. So I'm going to shift gears here actually, because
Yeah.
whenever I build an emotions column setup for anybody, I have to tweak it to how their mind works. And I'm going to say something now that is paying you a compliment, but it does require a shift, which is fine. And I've done this many times before. You're a very adaptive person, from what I can hear. You're very positive, and you move towards the good stuff, a lot of the time, which is adaptive and great. And for some people, I'd have to help them with that. But for you, it could provide a bit of a roadblock to getting access to what really bothers you. For some people, I ask them what bothers them, and they just have a list of like 20 different things at least. You probably aren't going to be like that so much. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm going to need to help bring that out of you more. And so I'm going to go about it a different way then. Forget what we've been talking about even. The career path and stuff, that's going to play a role. But I don't know how yet, because I need to understand what have been the principal frustrations and struggles of your life. And I just want you to organize them in terms of the broad themes of them. What are the things that have happened to you that have been hard?
The different, I guess there's been different stages. Does any particular one matter, or is it like the most recent one, or just the one that I remember most?
Just tell me the one that comes to mind first. We'll just go from there.
So I guess struggles. When I did get in a lot of trouble when I was in college, and so that created like a lot of created kind of like a very uncertain time, and yeah, it was just like a difficult period. But
Okay, so trouble in college. And by the way, sometimes I take notes on this when I do it. So
yeah,
can you tell me a little bit about this trouble in college? Because I'm going to help you get this oriented around this column system and where it all fits. What was
sure.
the trouble?
Yeah, long story short, I got in a bunch of legal trouble because I had a prescription, like an Adderall prescription from the school,
Mm-hmm.
and I sold some to an undercover cop, and that got me caught up in like this huge this very sensationalized drug bust that happened at the time. And so yeah, like I was all over the news. I ended up getting kicked out of the school I was attending at the time, and I had to go through like the legal process for a couple of years. Super stressful. Fortunately, I ended up getting a good resolution for that incident, or the best resolution possible. And I ended up being able to transfer to another school. I finished. That's when I started studying filmmaking. So yeah, I finished my undergrad career out there, and that's what kind of pivoted me into filmmaking. And so no, like a lot of great things ended up coming from it, but it was a very like stressful period, and it definitely took an impact on me and my family.
What was the most stressful part of it, Stephan? I totally get how that would be stressful.
Uh, just I'd say probably the over sensationalizing aspect of just like the way the story was being put out, and it made me out to be this like larger than life drug czar, which was just like not the case. Like I sold my Adderall a few times. It's like it became this huge thing that I wasn't. And so nowadays when like your reputation is dictated by just your online presence, and that's like the thing that comes across like all
Mm.
the major, like any Google search, any basic internet search, it kind of became it. Yeah, it became certainly awkward just to be labeled as like, they'd call me things like kingpin, just all these things and sensationalize the story. And it's like I wasn't
Wow.
that, but like online, I am that because they wrote that, you know.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and so yeah, so that for a while made things like now I'm like used to it. I'm like at peace with it, you know. Like obviously people still Google it and they still, it's like in the back of their head, but yeah, that became like a source of like awkwardness.
Have you ever been mischaracterized? Probably not to that level in your life, but have you ever been mischaracterized before, where people were misunderstanding you and
Yeah, that's happened. Yeah, it's happened. Like, it kind of happened before I got to college, right? And so I've had it happen at like different stages in my life.
ah,
I never had it happen at this level where it was like national attention and people
yeah.
were like publishing it in different publications. That was super weird. But yeah, like I guess I've had that happen in different stages.
Okay, so see, to me, we've just hit on our first theme. It's very broad. It is high stakes, and there's a specific thing to it. Getting mischaracterized, getting labeled, and being stuck with that label. That feels like one of your themes. Does that ring true to you?
Sure. Yeah, I could see that.
I don't want to mislabel you here, so
Yeah. Yeah,
tell me if I
yeah,
have it
yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I, yeah.
And is it being misunderstood, or what? How would you define that? How would you describe the worst part of that?
Um,
Being misunderstood, or being, is it like the violation of that being put out there, or what was
yeah,
the?
I think being being misunderstood probably.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm just gonna orient you to this. When I'm building out an emotions column, I would have as one of your themes getting mischaracterized, being misunderstood. That's a broad, high stakes theme, and it's connected to something very specific. Okay, so that would be your first theme. Now we can develop it a little bit more. I'll show you how that works later, but I'm just trying to show you how to develop these themes. Okay, let's move on to another. And by the way, we can always talk more about these things as much as you want, but I'm just trying to get it a little organized, shaped, so that if you had to describe to somebody, here are the major things I struggle with in my life, getting mischaracterized, being misunderstood is one of them, and this particular event is one of them, right? What are some others? What else has happened to you that you have found to be hard?
Um, let's see. Trying to think. Maybe.
Have you had losses or big changes that were hard?
I've. I mean, I've definitely like, but when you say losses, like losses of like loved ones or
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. Yeah, no, I've definitely experienced that throughout my life.
Can you talk about maybe the hardest one, just as a starting place?
As a starting place, um, I think losing losing I've definitely lost like grandparents and like great, like like a great uncle or like someone like that. But then I've also I don't know, a few years ago I lost an older brother, and that was really tough because someone older you can kind of
Yeah.
understand a little bit easier, and this one, like, he was still pretty young, and so it was a very unexpected death, and that definitely yeah, it was tough to deal with for sure.
So as I say to everybody who comes on here, because it's so generous to share your time and do this, for other people. If you don't want to talk about anything particular, you do not have to. But I know
Yeah,
you're kind of an open book kind of guy. But if you are willing to talk about it, can you say what happened?
yeah. So yeah, my brother he was a doctor. A doctor. He was a neurosurgeon,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, very young, very smart. And then one day he was driving, and he fell asleep while he was driving. He lost control of the car, and yeah, it resulted in his death.
Mm.
And
I'm so
so
sorry.
yeah, that's okay. It's okay. Yeah. So he was 33, so he was pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was very shocking to everyone. It definitely was a big reminder that life is so could be so uncertain, and so it could be so many things, and it could certainly be delicate. So you have to live very like purposefully, and make sure that you're focused on doing the things that you really like, that you really love, that you're really passionate about,
Ah,
because
wow. We just hit on a much better angle about career path. This is why I wanted to shift gears because I had an instinct about getting in there. Now this is explaining why your career path is so important to you. It's the kind of life is short vibe. Uh, I'm getting the sense. You have to tell me if I have this right. You're the one who knows.
maybe, yeah.
It's worth considering. I guess I
Yeah,
certainly don't
no,
know.
I've never made the connection, but yeah, there could be something there.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just
Yeah,
making a note of that. As always, anything I say is not true. This is not gospel. I have no idea. You're the one who knows, but there are going to be times where, because of the way I understand things, I may be able to bring some insights into things. And that's part of what is needed in the emotions column is to sort out what are these potential themes. Because what it's going to do is give you a little bit of a roadmap. It's going to organize things so you know where to look. So when you have a symptom, you can step back and be like, am I being mischaracterized or misunderstood? Is that the one that's active right now? Is this the life is so uncertain and delicate theme? And it's like you can almost look through, it's like looking at a bookshelf and you're like, is it that one, that one, that one, that one? And you start to figure out which moment relates to what. So this is a point of organization. Is it making sense so far?
yeah, I like that.
Okay. Um, so this, I'm just noting that it could be, I don't know, a kind of life is short kind of thing. How old were you when your brother died?
Uh, I was like 27. Yeah,
Okay. All right. So these are two very significant events, and not just events, but themes that relate to big time experience. Let's keep going along the lines of things like that. That's what I look for in the emotions column. Are there other things that felt like they had as much of an impact on you or were as big of a deal in your experience of life? I can give you some prompts to see if they open doors for you.
sure, I would love that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so how about like let's say romantic relationships? Did you ever have a breakup that was really hard, or have to break up with somebody, or did you stay out of relationships? What's your relationship experience been like?
It's been it's been no, it's been good. I've had some good relationships for sure. But actually, speaking of a relationship, like that definitely like turned the light on. Um, it's more like a definitely like a recent thing. Have My parents recently got divorced,
Mm-hmm.
but then when I was little, my parents also got divorced. I've definitely experienced.
So they remarried and then got
No,
divorced
no,
again, or
no. My yeah. So with my stepdad, there
oh, okay, all right,
was a yeah. So I've seen like a childhood divorce, and then like a divorce in my adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
And
How
yeah,
old,
I
how
mean,
old were you when your parents got divorced when you were a kid?
like 4 years old.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
And
let me go ahead.
yeah. So that's just a thought that just kind of came
But see,
about.
that's exactly right on. See, anything that's a big deal,
Yeah,
even if it's a big deal, like just in theory, and you don't even know how, your parents getting divorced when you're 4, it's got to be a big deal in some way. Your mom getting divorced from your stepdad now also could be a really big deal in a variety of ways. It depends on what the relationships are like and how you feel about it. But I'm going to ask you a question that you may not have the answer to, but this is the kind of thing we look for in the emotions column. Do you know what it meant to you that your parents got divorced? Or even, what does it mean to you that your mom and stepdad are getting divorced or recently got divorced?
um, might again it kind of maybe reinforces like the uncertainty aspect.
Okay,
And
so I'm going to phrase something, though, a particular way, and I don't know if this is right. I need your
yeah,
help to know, okay?
sure.
I'm thinking one way of phrasing this theme would be that relationships could be tenuous. Um, not sure how stable things are. Again, don't know if that's the case, but I'm probing. Does that feel like it hits a kind of rings a bell for you?
Yeah, sure. I could see that. Like even like on a subconscious level.
Okay. Um, so I'm going to say it to you again just to make sure that it resonates. But I said relationships are tenuous and nothing is all that stable in that realm. If I'm
Yeah.
if that's not how you feel, I want us to correct that because it it's not it's never going to be useful in the emotions column if it's coming from me. It needs to be something that fits with you.
Yeah, I could see there being some truth to that.
Okay, tell me. We got to iron this out then. What's missing, or what's misrepresented?
Um,
Like as an example, it could be that maybe your friendships have all been very stable, but you see romantic relationships don't tend to be as much. Or it could be that it's like, I thought they were really stable and you were shocked by it. I don't know what aspect plays out, but something does.
yeah. Um, it's kind of like a mixture of of both
Of
in
both of
terms
what I
of
said, you mean?
yeah,
Okay.
you know, I've had both play out.
When you say both, though, what do you mean? I want to make sure I follow.
Yeah, like had both like friendships and like relationships that have that some that have you know been temporary, kind of like you said, and then
Mm-hmm.
some that have been like long standing, and then there's been somewhere I don't know, I think maybe like just what I take away from all this is like when you think relationships going good and it's not,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and maybe that's what potentially maybe shocked me about my parents' recent divorce.
Yeah. So the surprise, the surprise of um, a new window into a relationship that comes when it suddenly ends. Okay. Um, that feels Do you see what I mean about how these three that we've said so far could be big pockets of emotional experience? They could cover
Yes.
a lot of territory. So when you have a symptom, we'll probably do one more for today, and
Sure.
I'll get to that in a second. But I wanted to explain how I'm seeing this so far. When you have a symptom and it suddenly comes up, or there's a sudden uptick, or it drops way down, and you're trying to figure out why, it's going to relate to these themes. And we're going to build a list of themes ultimately that relates to you. Now, I wanted to share with you just my own observation just to orient you to things, because different people work very differently here. To me, I feel like you are, in some ways, a person who has lots of experiences and knows all kinds of things, including about yourself. And then there's other parts where you may be just discovering certain things more, which kind of fits with what you like to do anyway. So I don't think you're going to mind it at all. But what I want to encourage you is, I think that your emotions column is going to take a little while to build out. That's not bad news. That's just kind of orienting you to it, because I want this to work for you. I want you to be able to understand what Sarno is saying, what I'm saying, so that you can use it well. But we've actually covered a huge, I don't know if you realize it, but we've covered a huge amount of territory in a short amount of time just to get these three huge themes down. Because now, when you start to think about, why am I having this new symptom? You have three areas you can look in and see, did something happen that spurred one of these to be activated? And if you get it right, if you recognize what the theme is for a given moment, you can actually get control of that acute symptom. Now, remember, I'm not talking about the chronic stuff like we talked about after you had the car accident and you kind of were stuck in the same place with things for a while. That's more doubt column stuff. And we're going to get to that next time. But this is like, if you suddenly don't feel well in your stomach, or you suddenly get a headache, or maybe the symptom, in the back actually gets significantly worse all of a sudden for a bit. That's emotions column stuff.
That makes sense.
And the more we get these themes kind of spelled out for you, both as you and I work together, and then as you work on it on your own, and I keep orienting you to it, you're going to have a roadmap for how to understand these things. Before today, it was kind of more general and vague, which is true for lots of people.
Yeah, this totally helps it become more digestible. It makes you, it's kind of like a better path to understanding yourself and what triggers what.
Exactly. And see, this mind-body map we're working on with emotions, doubt, and power columns, it's not something you're going to look at all that often. It's the act of doing it that actually just organizes it in your mind. Now you've got these themes in your mind. You're going to be, as you walk through your life, these things are going to be more in there now. They're more organized. So we've got to build this out just a little bit more, because there's usually more themes than just this, and I'm sure there are. So let's try one more before we wrap up for today. Okay? All right. You seem to do well when I give you like a prompt, a kind of area of life that opens up space for you. So far, we had the getting mischaracterized, which we got to kind of more generally. We got life is so uncertain and delicate, which came around the idea of loss, which you connected to your older brother. And then when I brought up relationships, you came up with your mom and stepdad getting divorced, and that being surprising, and that reminding you of the divorce when you were 4 of your parents. So when I think about other major areas of life, one area that I just wonder about, I have no idea where this is going to go, is how do you see your relationship with yourself? Like, self-esteem is a big, broad theme. Would you say you have a good relationship with yourself, or what is that like? And if you
I
don't,
would say so.
okay, so I'm glad to hear it. That's good. Let me rephrase it though, because the emotions column is looking for the hard parts. So, what would you say is the hardest part of your relationship with yourself?
The hardest part about my relationship with myself. Um, if I think generally I try to be very like in control of my like thoughts and try to surround myself with just like, overall positive thoughts, like, positive intentions and things like that. And when I'm experiencing any kind of negativity, I try to recognize it for what it is, and like kind of let it pass. So in that regard, I think like I maintain like a pretty healthy like relationship, and I always try to keep my self-esteem, at a good level. Um, maybe in terms of
I,
relationship with myself, like
yeah.
sometimes maybe there might be doubt there in terms of like abilities. Maybe I overanalyze situations, and that like could lead to me like psyching myself out from even just like doing it.
Hmm.
uh Sometimes like I'm sometimes I'm like the thing that stops me from, yeah, a lot of times like I'm my biggest barrier sometimes to either sometimes doing something or completing something.
Okay. This is this is fascinating and really useful. What you just said actually was two themes. Um, I'm just really good at organizing and understanding what these things are, so I'm going to say them back to you. So one is you have this kind of drive to stay positive, which is a great asset actually. But what it means is, in part, that negativity probably poses some kind of challenge that we haven't yet discovered, or at least that I don't know, because you're such a positive person. So the reason I bring this up is, remember, a lot of this can be unconscious, not even in your awareness. So if you are consciously a very positive person, it really is the kind of thing where symptoms could pop up when there's a negative experience and you are pushing it away because you're such a positive guy, and then boom, a symptom happens. So we have to find out more about negativity, especially probably in the more unconscious realm, and what role it's playing. I don't, since it's unconscious, you won't know yet. But by me bringing up the topic, you're going to start to think about it.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so that's one
Absolutely.
theme. The other theme is this idea of doubting your ability or overanalyzing situations, psyching yourself out, and becoming your own your own biggest barrier, right? Those are two kind of self-esteem related themes, and they both require a little more work. And let's see if we can work a little bit at it before we wrap up for today. Let's start with this doubt about abilities and overanalyzing situations being your biggest barrier. How have you gotten in your way? How has it impacted you? How have you gotten in your way in the past? Is it more about, oh, there were things you wanted to try that you didn't? Is it that you did try things, but it went a different way because of this? What happened?
Maybe in the past I haven't like released certain projects or certain things just because you know, I didn't push myself to necessarily do it, or I didn't think I was ready enough, or I didn't think the timing was good. Um, and
Did,
so,
did it lead you to feel that you miss out on opportunities, or that you weren't realizing your full potential? What does it mean?
potentially, and sometimes, but I mean, I'm also a firm believer that, you know, things happen when they need to happen too. So it's kind of like a medium between that, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But there's definitely been times like, because again, I am like a consistent creator. So there's been so many times where I just, you know, would just maybe put it on the back burner, or maybe it'd stay on the back burner, and maybe it'd get forgotten, and it's just on to the next one because I just, you know, got to create as much as I can while I can, you know. And so
Okay, so how do you feel about that though? I don't know if you even have an answer to that, but see, I can imagine that you'd have a feeling about it. And the reason I'm bringing this up is, let's say you're in your life and you have a symptom, and it turns out as you look at it, the present day moment is mirroring some kind of feeling of, oh, I could have created something there, but I didn't. And that's what led to the symptom, whatever you felt about it. So my question is, I wonder what you feel about that when that happens. Do you get angry with yourself? Do you wish you were different in some way? Do you criticize yourself? Do you get mad at maybe the world in some way? What happens? I don't even know if you know, but
no, I don't really get mad at the world. Maybe I'll like think about it for a long time, and even like it might weigh heavy, but even still, like I don't typically spend like too much time with regret. I just kind of like acknowledge it, and then I kind of keep it moving, and like I help it build like the next thing that I'm creating.
mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay, so it doesn't really stick with you or weigh you down, but it does sound like you wish it were different in some way.
yeah, yeah, and so now I think I'm more focused on like seeing things through, and just like if I truly believe in it, the project or the mission or the vision that I'm working on, like I see it out, and that could be anything from like a film to a screenplay to a Web3 project to a collection to something. But like if I truly believe in it, I'm gonna see it out.
Okay. So this is interesting. Whenever I'm looking at these themes, sometimes I feel like, ooh, we nailed it. I totally know it. This one feels to me like we're in the right ballpark, but we don't have it nailed yet. But that's okay, because what's going to happen is I'm going to send this list to you that I've
Great.
made, and you're going to be able to look at it and kind of think about it. And when we meet next, maybe before we dive into the doubt column, we'll talk a little bit about, okay, where did you get with this? And you also, I would recommend, and by the way, I also think we didn't totally get there on, um, what happens with negativity versus positivity. There's something in
Yeah,
there for you to think about. And
I
so
agree.
I feel like the first three, we kind of got nailed down a little bit more. These two are ones that are, they're coming into shape. And then there are other ones we haven't even touched on yet. And so, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you this list, but I'm also going to send you a list of the types of themes to look for. They're kind of like
Oh,
prompts, like I did today.
great.
And between now and then, you're don't take it as an assignment because you don't have to do it. But it's if you want to get the most out of it, I think you'll do well with this. Try to see if you can build out some themes,
Okay.
and that's your task for this point. Okay. Once you have your emotions columns themes kind of more laid out and you feel like, oh yeah, that describes me, because that's what should happen. You should read those themes and be like, wow, that really captures me, the full part of the struggle that can be being you. And so we don't have to finish that by next week, of course. This can all be a work in progress, but it starts to give a framework, and I could see your wheels turning as we got those first three.
Yeah.
You could see how useful they could be. So let's keep working at it. We got these other two. We got to get more in shape, and then there's some more to be gained. And I'm going to give you the tools to work on that over this time. Does that sound good?
Sounds great. Sounds great. Wow. Yeah. This is yeah, it feels great talking about all these things, and I could tell this is going to ultimately be very helpful for just helping me manage just myself and life and health. And
well, ultimately, that's really what the columns do, is they organize our whole experience, and they organize what we're going to do about that experience as well. So we're going to get to that, but this is a great, great start. And I'm glad you're seeing the value in it.
I definitely am. I'm looking forward to seeing what we're going to do with this.
Okay, sounds good. So I'll send you that information.
Perfect.
When we meet next, you can, we'll touch base about what you found out about that at first, and then we'll dive into the doubt column, which is going to be talking about your different thought processes and how to think about that sort of thing as it relates to your symptoms, especially about symptoms that have been long-standing. And the goal of the doubt column is to break the chronicity of it, to start to help you see, why are you actually going to get fully better from this? That's the doubt column part, but it's great that we have this emotions column stuff in place, because it's going to be really important as well at different times.
Perfect.
Okay, Stephan. Well, thank you again for joining me today.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you, Dan. This was very helpful, and I'm definitely looking forward to our next session.
Okay, sounds good. Looking forward to seeing you, Stephan.
Take care. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Bye.
These sessions are always so interesting because every one of you is so different. In this session, what I found is that Stephan, I felt, got a ton out of the organization that started to happen as soon as we were able to start to organize these emotional themes. For some of you, it can happen very quickly. For others, it can be a little more vague, and I think for Stephan, he was more in that camp. It was kind of more like he was taking life as it came, and a lot of times these very positive qualities can lead to certain different kinds of ways of having to grapple with things. One of them for him, I think, is he has been very aware of lots of things, but not totally clear on the specifics. And that's what we're looking for in the emotion column's themes. If you're looking for why did this symptom happen, eventually you got to get specific. And that's very hard to do without having the themes defined. So we've got 3 good themes, really great themes defined, 2 ones that are brewing, and he's going to work on some others as I send him some guidelines. When we meet next, we'll dive into the doubt column and continue to organize his mind-body experience. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we'll get back to you personally.